Cassie, can you confirm that we have a quorum of commission members and can open the hearing meeting?
Yep, it looks to me like we have quorum.
Okay. So, would you like me to read these items on the welcome screen, or just the caveat about the order?
I think, yeah, I don't think you need to read the whole thing.
Great. So, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found below. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Should an interruption occur while the meeting, in which the meeting ends abruptly, the meeting will not be restarted and all agenda items will automatically be continued to the next scheduled meeting. Right. All right. It is now 6:04 p.m. and I will call to order the August 10th, 2020 meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. This meeting is being recorded. Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items? Being none, we'll move on to public hearings and meetings. First item, public hearing continued from July 13th, 2020. Bundled notice of intent filed by the City of Easthampton, Mass DEP file number 151307, applicant seeking an order of conditions for various routine, non-exempt maintenance activities. Cassie, is there a request to continue?
There is a request. I have no other updates.
All right, so we are continuing this to August 24th, is that correct? Is there a motion to continue DEP file number 151307 to August 24th at 6 p.m.?
Move to continue to August 24th at 6 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Roll call vote. Jan Buttrick?
Aye.
Deborah August?
Aye.
Julie Busa? Not present. Michael Whittemore?
Aye.
Jay Ryan?
He said aye, but I don't think we can hear. For some reason, even though you were
Jay,
unmuted.
could you unmute your microphone?
Yeah, your audio isn't working. Did you see the thumbs up?
No. Cassie, do you have any advice at this time?
Thumbs up means aye.
Yeah.
Better now?
Yes. Was that not, I didn't catch your vote, Jay.
I think he said okay.
Jay, could you do that one more time? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
Can you hear me? Aye?
Aye, got it.
Okay.
And Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Next item, public meeting continued from July 13th, 2020. Request for determination of applicability filed by R. Leveque Associates, Inc. on behalf of Jeff Hunter, Hrdd 56 LLC at 35 and 40 O'Neill Street, map 113 and 114, lots 6 and 16, for improvements within existing asphalt areas. Is there anyone in attendance to speak to this item?
Hello, Rob Leveque from our Leveque Associates.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. I also have Sophia Bitsis from our office. Hopefully she's on the call, and she's going to be the plan controller, if that works. Or if Cassie wants to do it from her office, I don't know what the best way to do that is.
Whatever's easier, Cassie. We have both plans that we just sent you recently for the 2 items. So if you want to drive, I'm here if you need me.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to make you a co-host so you can go ahead and share.
Perfect.
It'll probably be easier.
Great.
All right.
Bear with me here 1 second. Rob, do you want the site plan right now or the response letter?
Probably the site plan first, please.
Okay. Everybody see that okay?
Yep. All right, so Sophia, yep, perfect. Okay. So I believe everybody's seen the plan before. I'm trying to remember the what we did last time. So this is a continuance. So there was a couple questions related to stormwater, questions related to the requirements for the SPCC and the multi-sector general permit. So we kind of reviewed those and replied in letter form that was provided to Cassie today. It's kind of been a little bit crazy because I just left a site visit with the planning board on this property not too long ago, within the last 45 minutes or so. So basically, the plans haven't changed drastically. They're pretty much only the real change that I would say is we added or actually relocated the oil truck storage area and the propane truck storage area. So we left the propane tanks as is. Today at the site visit, we had some discussion and we were talking about moving those kind of to the top left. But we've decided against that to keep the propane tanks in the safest location possible. But we did have the ability to take the oil trucks. Now there's no transfer of oil on site, but we do have oil trucks. So the idea was to take the oil trucks and get them out of the buffer zone. So the parking that you see for the within the buffer zone, which is to the top left right there, yep, those spaces there, those are arguably those are for the propane storage trucks. So there's propane that's going to be going out to different locations throughout Western Massachusetts from this facility, and that's where they would be stored. If we can go to the letter, or if there actually, you know what, are there any questions on the plan? There's really no major updates other than those. Can everybody hear me okay?
Questions on the plan? All right, I think you can move on to the letter.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize if it's a little crazy today because I'm literally stopped on the side of the road coming back from my site visit on this job. So it's a little crazy. So the letter, basically what we did is we took the comments and we kind of just highlighted and read our responses. So if we scroll down a little bit, I'll just kind of paraphrase if that's okay. Not that. Okay, so under the first item, so this was in response to an email from one of the planning board members to Jeff Bagg. If you just increase the size a little bit, ever so slightly, that would be great. So under first, so the applicant is proposing an indoor spill containment area for the transfer of, outdoor spill containment area for the transfer of oil. So to clarify, there will be no transfer of oil on site. These are all Mass DOT approved oil trucks. They go through the very specific inspections that are required. They do not qualify, or there's not a need for an SPCC because the trucks are handled under a transportation use. So the oil trucks do not have any sort of transfer of oil at the facility. They're filled up in a off-site location. They're then They go around Western Mass, fill up people's oil tanks, and then they would be stored on site. Now, we do show a number of oil trucks, but those oil trucks are really, there's really not as many trucks as we show spaces for. Mr. Hunter is basically looking at this as an opportunity at some point, if he ever consolidates all of his locations, that he could bring the oil trucks to this one location. So right now, you could expect there to be 8 to 10 trucks, not the 20 that were originally shown. There was a containment area that was discussed. So that was kind of something as an extra fail-safe measure. It wasn't intended to be something to prevent spills, so to speak. It was actually something that in the event of a spill that we could respond, or the owner could respond and plug a containment area. Rather than keeping a containment area plugged all the time, which you can imagine has issues with stormwater and other things like that. This way, if there is ever a spill of any sort, we could contain it within the spill containment area. So that can be, I believe the recommendations are that it be the size to handle the 25-year storm. So we can certainly do that. We would probably, that would be subbed out to a company that's deals with those specific containment units. In addition to that, there would be need to be coverage under the multi-sector general permit as a transportation use. So that would be done in concert with that. So the thought process was we were working towards local approvals, conservation and planning. Upon receipt of those approvals, Mr. Hunter would move forward with the multi-sector general permit for industrial stormwater. And then the suggestion there is to copy the commission on that, as part of a condition of any determination that's issued. We would basically, it could be conditioned and that can be provided. Also, I suggested that today at our site visit with the planning board that be conditioned as part of the special permit that potentially could be issued for this site. So the stormwater from the site is not changing. We're not changing any of the catch basin structures. We had suggested just making sure that there's hoods on the outlets. Besides that, there is no new point source discharge. We don't trigger. Don't have any new impervious, so we don't trigger the local stormwater ordinance or the DEP stormwater management policy. So I think that clears that question up. As I had mentioned, where the MSISGP is likely applicable. The MS4 stormwater rules and regulations, again, we're not triggering anything with new stormwater. So those controls, while that's something we want to make sure we're compliant with in the future. If anything changes, there's no changes proposed. Wetlands Protection Act, where we've submitted the RDA, and again, the stormwater does not appear to apply. SPCC is not applicable to transportation. And then the multi-sector general permit I talked about. And then, yes, if we were subject to the stormwater, this would be a LUPL, but because we're not subject to the stormwater, it is not applicable. And then there's no change under the, there's no change to the, no real activity other than striping in the reuse of the property to trigger anything from the aquifer, zone 2. So there was questions from Dan Murphy, similar or related to the same. I've copied and pasted the response from Mr. Hunter regarding the inspections. I believe Mr. Hunter is on the call if he was able to log in and can speak to the details of Mass DOT and their stringent requirements for maintaining vehicles and the ongoing maintenance and inspections. So with that, I would turn it back to the commission for any questions.
Commissioner Buttrick, do you feel that your comments have been addressed?
Yeah, I think it clears things up quite a bit. I guess maybe I misunderstood what, oh, my screen's all gone all blurry here. I guess I misunderstood the intent of the site at the last meeting, that there's no transfer of fuel makes things, a lot less needful of some of these issues that I was concerned about, I guess, if I'm phrasing that correctly. I guess I still, I I don't understand the site drainage currently. Not that maybe that's necessarily something we have to worry about, but where does stormwater go currently?
So it's picked up in a series of catch basins on site. I believe they're in line. Could probably pull the plan up again, and then they eventually do go out to the O'Neill Street right of way.
Okay. And so that containment area will have some sort of subsurface drain that will connect to that existing drainage system. And
we were thinking a surface plug that would then sheet flow. So the catch basins that exist on site, we would make sure they were hooded and that the sumps were maintained so that floatables could be caught if for some reason there was. In a lot of the discussions we've had with Mr. Hunter, it's kind of become very clear to us that there's not a lot of opportunity for catastrophic failure of oil, just given the way that things work and all of the inspections that are required for by DOT. The one item that he has experienced over the years and he's well aware of and something that they need to maintain on a regular basis are the hoses. I guess you can get like pinhole size holes in the hoses, like very minor. Those hoses are not pressurized. But they can leak a little bit if there's any sort of holes in those hoses. So those are replaced on a regular basis and they're inspected daily as part of their requirements. There's a log that they do each day. Those logs, one of the items that they look at specifically each day is the hose to make sure that there's no issues. In the event that there has been in the past, I believe he said, and Jeff, if you're on, you might want to speak to this a little bit better, but very minimal amount of oil that's stored in the hose, and they're not pressurized, so you're not getting a spurt of oil. It's really just, you might just get a slight bit of leakage on the outside of the hose, and they have spill containment in each truck and a spill plan, and that's all required by DOT. Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You did a great job. Can you hear me?
Yep. Do you want to just reiterate, or is there anything I missed?
You just reassure, if there's, the way we usually see if there's a pinhole, when we inspect our hoses, you'll see a little, that'll be wet. And when it's wet, that means there's an issue, and we go right away to get it fixed and have a whole, get a whole new hose put on. But we inspect them all the time, and usually it's if it got caught on something, it usually starts out minor, and we get it fixed right away. I don't want any spillage anywhere on the ground with oil.
And then you also, am I right in understanding that you'll have an in-house mechanic that's available to also address any issues that come up?
Absolutely. We have an in-house mechanic that'll address any issues that come up. Correct.
Got it.
For me, knowing that there's no on-site transfer is big, I guess, because that, in my experience, that would be the biggest likelihood of having having some kind of spill was, hose, something happens during transfer and you spill, 20 gallons or 40 gallons or something like that as transfer is occurring before it can be shut off. But so the trucks basically come to the site filled, and then they leave the site filled, or they're empty at the site, and then they go fill someplace and then go do deliveries from there.
Yeah,
right.
Like a normal, I'll just give you a normal day.
Mm-hmm.
We come in the morning, we have our tickets, say there's, I give each driver, he's got 2,000 gallons of delivery of oil. What they will do is they'll go to Springfield, our trucks will be empty, or they may have 100 or 200 on them. They'll go to Springfield, put the 2,000 gallons on, go deliver, and then come back to the facility empty. But sometimes they're not empty because not everybody takes what they ordered. But we don't transfer any oil. We're basically like the UPS of oil. People order it, and we deliver what they want, and then we come back. There's no value into me storing it. Let somebody else store it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. So that addresses my questions.
I had one administrative question. I'm hoping you can clarify. Can you confirm that if the owner of the property is still David Strong Jr., or has the property been transferred?
It is still David Strong Jr. to my knowledge.
Was a copy of the RDA sent to him?
Yes, and I believe we provided the green cards. I think Roz from my office has provided that.
Yes, I've received that from you.
Okay, fantastic.
Great,
thank you. Are there any other questions from commission members? All right. Are there any other comments from the public?
Hi, it's Mike. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, Michael.
I didn't think David Strong was in the application, so that was a question from our last meeting. So for this discussion, he's a neighbor of mine and I'm friendly with him, so I'd like to recuse myself from this discussion.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Cassie, can you tell if there are any other questions or comments hanging out there?
Yeah, I haven't received any requests. If anybody would like to make comment, any members of the public, you're welcome to send me a chat indicating so. You can also use the raise hand function found within the participant section. And then also you can go ahead, I think at this time it'd be safe to say if you have a comment for this, you can unmute yourself and say that now, being that I haven't received any indication that anyone has comments. I don't think there'll be a bunch of chatter. So if anybody has a comment, you can unmute yourself now and say so.
All right, I'm not seeing any action, so I'm going to, in the spirit of keeping the meeting moving, I'm going to entertain a motion. Would anyone care to make a motion regarding this request for determination of applicability?
Before we do that, was there, I know Rob had mentioned that potentially having a condition tied to this. I don't know if we need to reiterate what that condition was before we make the motion or if that's after.
The motion would include a condition if the motion were to refer to a provision that can allow for conditions. There's only one of those.
Right. Okay.
Can somebody remind me what sort of what sort of options we have for acting on an RDA in terms of numbers and wording?
Well, positive or negative. Positive meaning the commission finds that it warrants the filing of a notice of intent. Negative meaning that it does not require further review under the Wetlands Protection Act by the commission.
Right. But...
And under negative, it's one is that the area is not within the area described in the request is not an area subject to protection under the Act or the buffer zone. Two is that the work described in the request is within an area subject to protection under the Act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent. Areas subject to protection being the wetland resource area propers and not the buffer zone. Three, the work described in the request is within the buffer zone as defined in the regulations, but will not alter an area subject to protection under the Act. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent subject to the following conditions, if any. Or the work described in the request is not within an area subject to protection under the Act, including the buffer zone. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent unless and until said work alters an area subject to protection under the Act. 5, the area described in the request is subject to protection under the Act, since the work described therein meets the requirements of the following exemption as specified in the Act and the regulations. No notice of intent is required. 6, the area and/or work described in the request is not subject to review and approval by this commission.
So is there even work proposed in the buffer zone?
The fence is within the buffer zone,
Is in the buffer zone.
as I recall.
So we're looking at type 3 probably, and which is the one that has the option to add conditions. Are we looking to add any conditions such as pre-construction, notification of, work going to begin to look at erosion controls or any things like that?
The commission's standard practice in the past when issuing a negative determination 3 is to include pre-construction notice to the tune of at least 48 hours, as well as the opportunity to be on site to inspect erosion and sedimentation controls prior to the commencement of work. And that's about where we've drawn the line in the past.
Are any erosion and sediment controls needed in this case?
They are shown on the drawing, I believe.
All right, I'll move to issue a negative determination of applicability type 3 with conditions being that 48 hours of notice be provided to the commission prior to the work so that erosion and sediment controls can be inspected.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan, are you abstaining?
Whittemore?
That's what I meant. Thank you. Commissioner Whittemore, are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
All right. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I did have a question. This might be more, Dan might be able to speak to this, but for the stormwater permit from the city, I know it can depend on if it's the commission who issues the stormwater permit or if it's the planning board. And I wasn't sure. I think you had been able to give insight on this, Dan. I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that now or that was separate.
It doesn't seem like stormwater permit is stripped by this project, is what I'm thinking. Do you agree with that, Rob?
I do, sir. Yep.
Yeah, it seems that there's not enough on-site disturbance that would trigger a stormwater permit from the city.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep. But yeah, I guess that the instance of precedent that we set at the Wamelco Way project a couple of years ago, where we were reviewing an RDA and the planning board was reviewing some kind of permit, and we all decided that the planning board would be the stormwater authority in that case, would apply in the case of this project, were a stormwater permit necessary, I believe. But that's probably a case-by-case decision we would want to make unless the ordinance changes.
I believe that's because a determination is not technically a permit under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Correct.
Okay. So with that, are we ready to move on to the next item, Cassie?
Yeah, and just a note, I'll be able to send over that determination hopefully tomorrow, definitely by the end of the week. I just need to generate it and send it to DEP and everything. So I'll be in touch about this finalized determination for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, Public hearing continued from July 13th, 2020. Notice of intent filed by R. Leveque Associates, Inc. on behalf of Cynthia Stepler at 69 and 73 Loudville Road, maps 140 and 139, lots 28, 29, and 11 for new 18-unit housing development, Mass DEP file number 151309. So,
Thank you. For the record, Rob Leveque from our Leveque Associates, representing Cynthia Stepler for the proposed condo community to be located off of Loudville Road. I believe Sophia is also sharing this screen. So thanks, Sophia. What we're showing here is we'll call it an 18-unit condo project with a 17 new units and one existing unit that's basically the house that's going to be converted. So we had another site visit today with the planning board. That went well. We were able to show the planning board where the proposed units are. We have also provided a letter responding to the concerns and questions of the Planning Board and Conservation Commission. I believe you have a copy of that. If there are any specific questions, I can answer those while we have the plans up. Otherwise, I would be happy to go through the comments provided by our office.
I think let's go through the comments.
Great. So if you could bring those up, that'd be great. Okay. So the first comment was, who will own the, who will own the maintenance? There's going to be a homeowners association, so this will be a private development. This will be completely owned by the homeowners association. The residents of the community will make up that homeowners association. That type of document will be provided in a draft form to the planning board as requested. And we can expect that all of the maintenance of the stormwater, any utilities, etc., will all be the responsibility of that homeowners association. It will not fall on the town in any way, shape, or form. Number two, the stormwater calculations. There was a question that the volumes are reduced under the post-development condition, and the response is that's correct. The post-development peak discharge rate of runoff volumes to each design point are equal to or less than the pre-development for the 2, 10, and 100-year storms that were studied. Number three, how quick will the infiltration pond infiltrate after the 100-year storm? 100-year storm event will take approximately 37.9 hours for the infiltration basin to draw down. Number four, 8-inch perforated PVC in the infiltration basin. I'm sorry, it jumped on me. The perforated 8-inch HDPE in the infiltration basin may be below estimated seasonal high groundwater. Test pit 11 performed in this area of the infiltration basin was excavated to a depth of 110 inches and shows no signs of seasonal high groundwater based on the existing conditions survey and the test pit data of the 110-inch TP11 was excavated to an elevation of 182. The proposed invert of the 12-inch perforated HDPE is 182.5. While this office cannot confirm the estimated seasonal high groundwater is below the elevation 182.8, we anticipate the similar course of sand material exists deeper elevations than 182. A confirmatory test pit will be advanced prior to construction and provided. We can provide that to the commission and to the planning board. Number five, calculations appear to show that the infiltration basin fully contains a 100-year storm. Please confirm. Have you modeled larger storms to determine the size of the storm events that would overflow the basin? The infiltration basin is designed to capture the recharge, and recharge all storm events up to and including the 100-year storm, and will still provide 1 foot of freeboard the peak water elevation. No analysis of the site was performed beyond the 100-year storm event based on the proposed grades of the site. If a storm event were to exceed the basin storage infiltration capacity, it would overflow to the west behind units 15 and 16 to the isolated wetland and then down the slope to the north. Number 16, please provide.
Can I ask a question there, Rob?
Sure. Yep. Sorry.
Just for my own understanding here, so the modeling of the 100-year storm with a foot of freeboard in the infiltration basin, does that assume the total volume, or is there any infiltration factored into the storm being entirely contained?
I would believe that there would be infiltration factored in, but I would have to confirm that with Philippe or John.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Number 6, the long-term operation and maintenance plan provides guidance for the proper upkeep of the infiltration basin and sediment forebay, as well as for all other components of the stormwater management system. It is recommended that the sediment be removed from the forebay when it reaches a depth of 6 inches. Number 7, have you confirmed the roadway width and cul-de-sac radius for the fire department? Yes, we have, and that's based on this. It's been designed based on the actual subdivision standards, so pretty straightforward there. So I'd be happy to go in through any other items, or if there's something, if you want to go back to the, Sophia, if you could go to the grading plan, that might be a little bit easier for people to kind of tell where water is going and see if there's any questions. That would be C5. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
So, Commissioner Buttrick, you had previously requested or expressed concern about the sandy soils and increased loads near slopes within riverfront area and above wetland resource areas. Is that something you want to continue discussion of?
Jen, I'm sorry, you're muted still.
Do that. I'm sorry. Yeah, the slopes make me really nervous back there, given their steepness and height, and you know, the proximity of the infiltration basin to them, and some of the structures also. Did we give comments in written form to you, Rob? Cassie, did we give comments in written form?
I sent a list of comments to Ryan Nelson on the 15th, or just questions for clarification. I didn't have anything with there's questions about like if there would be basements and excavated material, basically all the questions that had remained and weren't able to be answered at the end of the last meeting. So I can go through those if you want.
That would be great. And Sophia, I don't know what's going on, but I can't see the plan. If you could zoom out a little bit. It's supposed to be.
Is that good?
Rather large. I'm looking at the slope only. Yeah, here we go. It's updating now. Thank you. So before we get into the comments and maybe just a discussion of the slopes, so to speak. So we were out there again today with the planning board. This area is pretty vegetated. The slopes are, have pretty mature vegetation on all the slopes and all the adjacent areas. The area of the stormwater basin is in a very flat spot, kind of at the low point of the site, well away from the slope. Anything that were to fill up in a catastrophic storm event and spill over the banks of the basin would be into a low-lying area. And actually there's a significant amount, we're discussing this, there's a significant amount more storage potential in just the existing, the existing and proposed contours in that area. And then as eventually would progress, the stormwater could sheet flow down a swale and then eventually over to the slope, which is certainly filtered and would continue to be filtered with existing vegetation. So we're not building, although, it's, as you look at the plan, it kind of, it appears that, we're going to be impacting the slopes. We're really kind of sitting at the top of the slopes. And we paid close attention to the riverfront area and also to those slopes and kind of worked around those. The contours are 1 foot contour intervals, so they do feel rather, it feels rather extreme when you look at them, but again, they're fairly reasonable, and we're certainly not planning on impacting those slopes And, you know, I guess the approach that we were recommending that the contractor take is a surgical one, so that they would go in and not impact any of the vegetation that's not needed. Some of the questions that were raised at the last meeting, and I think in the interim, I think some of the letters from the land, I forget the land trust group, forget the specific name, but the questions related to, you know, what happens to this area. I don't think we have any real concern about, you know, putting some sort of protection on the property. We'd rather not deal with a CR because it's a big cost for the owner. But certainly some sort of protection or some sort of condition that we would not exceed the limit of work, I think is logical. And I think that was suggested in some way, shape, or form by the land trust.
So my concern deals with groundwater a lot. When we have a lot of different places in town where it seems like, you know, we call them dingles locally, but there are pretty high infiltration soils from the ground surface down a ways, and then below ground at some depth is a confining layer where along the rivers and streams where water then tends to travel horizontally. And so there's a number of places, one here in my neighborhood towards sort of parallel with Paul Street, one behind the driving range, Tasty Top site, where there are these dingles that erode rapidly up the slopes that are sort of spurned by that groundwater flow, it seems. You know, they tend to progress rapidly, and you can kind of see mature trees falling into them. There's also another few spots in town where there are steep slopes and slope failures that have occurred or are occurring. There's a recurring one, two actually along Lower Mill Pond, one along Emerald Place by Lower Mill Pond specifically, and another on the side by the mills. And then there is another one along the Manhan River out on Loudville, actually, where the entire backyard slope has failed away. And I'm just concerned about, number one, the increased load on the slope with the residences in some cases, but even more significantly, the increased groundwater load that's being put in that concentrated location at that stormwater basin. You know, if that slope is stable now, but it's close to not being stable, adding that extra water on it could potentially cause that slope to become unstable. And that would be sort of similar to what we have seen happen at some other spots in town. And it makes me nervous, frankly. So it would make me comfortable if it was possible to do a stability analysis of that slope and see what, you know, how stable it is now, and see what kind of loads that additional stormwater infiltration would add to it. I do note that the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook raises concerns about steep slopes when it comes to the siting of stormwater basins and such, and suggests that they be placed at least 50 feet away from the slope. And I'm not sure that we meet that in this case. I'm not even entirely sure that this would be within the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction entirely, but I feel the need to raise the points anyways, because if there was an issue, it would impact the resource areas. And in my mind, it's kind of like possibly a public safety issue too. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this site. I've seen a lot of slope failures, and this seems like there's the potential to cause one, even if the slopes aren't being impacted by the work directly.
So I understand the concern. Obviously we don't want any issues related to the slopes either. The basin, I do believe, is over 50 feet away. I don't know if I can, with a little technical difficulty on the phone here, being able to pull up the plan. I don't know if Sophia is still sharing that or not.
That's just a rule of thumb,
No, it is a requirement, and we're aware of that. And then, so again, if this basin does fill up, I think it would have been, I know the commission, I don't know if you guys had done a site visit with Ryan, I believe, but when you did, were you able to be there, Dan?
No, I haven't been able to be there.
Okay, so it's a really nice flat existing, field. There's, where the stormwater basin is going. So there's really no new, tree clearing for it. It's pretty much in the low point naturally of the site. Yet it's an open meadow. There's really no tree clearing required to make it happen. And then in the end, when it's completed, it's going to be sitting into the landscape. It's not going to have big berms on the edge of a slope. And I do believe the basin is 50 feet from the top of that slope that we're talking about. So as far as the basin goes, I don't think there's any potential for any immediate concern. However, we do understand the concern about the structures. They are a little bit closer. And we think that we can do that in a surgical manner. We can do I think obviously during construction, we need to pay close attention to those, but we think that they're, in a reasonable spot and, actually will be quite nice, as they abut that, protected open space that we're anticipating.
Doesn't make me any less nervous, but
that's your job. You're an engineer, right?
Rob, while we're talking about stormwater, there are a couple of locations that, I'm assuming all the open area around the units and the stormwater basin is going to be maintained as residential lawn. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. A little bit of landscaping, but yeah, generally lawn.
And so there are a couple of areas where there are swales graded into the site.
Yep.
And not to, burden every project with every project that's come before it, but that's how we learn these things. What provisions are there to maintain those swales, those grades moving forward? The commission has in the past had to deal with complaints on residential properties where swales had been filled, not maliciously, with the best of intentions for safety, but swales had been filled, and then they wondered why they were having runoff issues.
Yeah.
So
good point. Yeah, good point. Good question. We've run into that quite a bit over the years, specifically with residential subdivisions, because a lot of times there'll be cross grading or cross slopes that there is not an easement or a drainage or a grading restriction associated with. Therefore, people decide to put a shed on it or fill an area, put a pile of material and create problems for themselves and neighbors. In this particular case, this is a private community. There will be no ability for these folks to, under the homeowners association, they'll probably be able to maintain a small patio area. But as far as ground maintenance and improvements, they will not be allowed to do so. So it's nice that this is a condo association, very specific controls that will be in place. And you won't see anybody out there in their backyard with an excavator, a backhoe, a shovel, or anything like that. It will all be maintained by a private company that's working for the property manager, that is working for the homeowners association.
Okay. And speaking of patios, are those what is proposed and shown on the drawing? Is that
so there's
considered typical, or is that going to be what is built?
So it's a typical footprint. However, we anticipate that that's pretty close to what will be built. These would be so generally ranch-style units with the ability to do an upper story. They would have a first floor master, 2-car garage, front-loaded, and then around the backside of the unit. As you look at the plan, you'll see that there's kind of a rectangle on the back right and back left of each unit. Those are covered porches. So that's the patio porch that I was talking about. They have the ability, typically there's an option that they can cover it, or if they choose not to, it might be a little cheaper and they just do a patio. And that's really their control, and that's where their limit of their control. Obviously they have input if they vote, homeowners association votes, but they would have to adhere to the design set forth in the project plans and execute that. And then as the homeowners association takes over, typically at 85% occupancy of the owners, that transition becomes the responsibility of the homeowners association, and they would monitor themselves, so to speak.
It's Mike. I have a quick question. So do we have the information on the homeowners association and how that's going to be set up? Because
yep, we do. We have a draft homeowners association. They typically don't get set up until the project proponent gets a little bit farther along. But there's a standard homeowners association that we've used. They're all generally the same. They all outline the master deed, all the different rules and regulations, how votes are taken, and then how the property is managed.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. When my neighborhood was built, it was built because they needed to create a homeowners association, but there was no homeowners association. So I just want to clarify that.
Yep, a lot of times, if you live in a subdivision, a lot of times the homeowners associations do get set up, but they typically are underfunded and not heavily regulated. In a condo community, it's quite different. So, are you in a residential subdivision or are you in a condo?
Residential.
Okay, yeah. So this would obviously be residential too, but it's different in nature in that it's a.
Rob, it looks like you muted yourself by mistake.
Sorry. So the unit owners and the homeowners association are responsible as a whole for the maintenance of the community, which works out much better. And if there's issues that come up or if there's violations or questions, it would be handled professionally by the homeowners association property management company.
Michael, does that address your concern?
It looks like his screen might have frozen, unfortunately. I don't know if anyone else is seeing that.
I'm not, but I believe you.
It looks like he's frozen there.
Okay.
I'll have to come back to it.
So we'll hopefully Michael can unfreeze and rejoin us, and if there's any further discussion of that point, we can resume. I guess I'm wondering, Sophia, could you zoom into kind of the middle to the right of where the road splits, so where we see kind of the majority of activities in the buffer zone?
Are you looking in this area? I'm sorry, through the chair. Are you looking more near these units here so I can zoom in a little bit more?
So I'm looking kind of where the road goes between, and I would like to see the footprints of the units of 10, 11, 17, and 18, I believe, if you zoom in that general area. Okay. So I guess thank you. So in particular, I'm wondering relative to units 17 and 18, which are with the backs of those units are within the 100-foot buffer zone. Is there any opportunity to rotate so that they're even less in the buffer zone? Does that make sense, what I'm trying to describe? Or what dictates the alignment of units 17 and 18?
So you're talking about a clockwise rotation of 17 and 18?
Right. To bring
So
the corner closer
we
to
wouldn't
the road.
we wouldn't want to go any closer to the property line with 17. And if you look at the back corner of 17, there's a there's that porch there, so you right where the hand is. If you were to rotate it towards the roadway, you'd have a little bit less. You'd have less driveway to accommodate Unit 17's access. So it ends up being a little goofy in the end. To make the swale work, we'd probably still be similar disturbance. I do believe with the offsite wetland, there's still approximately, it's got to be close to 50 feet. Where's the buffer? I don't know if we have the 50-foot buffer on here. I'm trying to see where that is.
No, you don't, and that's fine. We don't have a 50-foot buffer.
Yeah, so I believe that what we're showing is the 100. So I think we're probably maybe a little less than 50 at the closest point.
I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity on the site to further minimize encroachment in buffer zone. Obviously you've kept the design out of riverfront area, which is the resource area proper, and that's desirable. I'm just wondering if there's any other opportunity to minimize in buffer zone.
We tried to keep it compact. Believe it or not, we kind of tried to keep it compact. And on either end of the community, you'll notice we didn't extend it to the right, or to because I'm just still. Can you zoom out for a second? Yeah, so it's pretty spacious as you get down towards the right-hand side, and then off to the left, there's the property does go, and I guess that what direction I'm looking at, but that property does go pretty far to the left. So there's wooded, really, we tried to keep as many wooded areas as possible. The proximity of the units is really kind of based on the separation required, and then trying to avoid the isolated wetland and the BVW. Kind of nestles, believe it or not, when you're out there. I don't know if you guys got a chance to walk the site, but as you're walking out that road to the right, the units are kind of nestled right in. Kind of sits quite nice, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a nice little community. There is some grading, but if you look at 10 and 11, we don't even have enough grading to make it a walkout. I mean, it's really just probably an English basement there, if anything. There's some grading behind 8 and 9, but we're still on the reasonable portion of the, we're at the start of the slope, but really on the upper portion with very, reasonable slopes. Same thing with 12 and 13. We kind of nestled on that high point where it's kind of a little plateau there. And then 14, 15, and 16 are really flat. I mean, that's like out in that meadow there.
For the time being, that was my question. I'm going to open it up or encourage other members of the commission to take the opportunity to ask any questions.
We had a question last time about the snow disposal, where that was going to be located.
So, as typical with these communities, I would expect that normal storm events, as long as they're not piled on top of each other, could be handled right on site. The sides of the road, we have a sidewalk on one side, so that would obviously have to be maintained for both going out the cul-de-sac and then the little spur road off to the left. So I would expect there is a shoulder on the right-hand side of the road. A minimal amount of soil, I'm sorry, not soil, minimal amount of snow could certainly be stockpiled there. I don't think it's going to be desirable to stockpile in the center of the islands. Obviously, there's landscaping in there. So I would expect that in major storm events, they may have to have their management company truck offsite with a loader in the event that we get, multiple, large storm snow events.
And also there was a discussion of maybe monuments so that the landscape, the lawns don't get extended into the slope areas.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a great idea. Kind of consistent with what my discussion was earlier about, conditioning the open space, stay open space. There's really no reason for anybody to need to go beyond the limit of work unless there was some sort of, repair that needed to happen at some point. But right now, there would be no intent to go beyond the limit of work. I would suggest that we monument that and memorialize that as open space as part of the special permit.
So that's a good point. This commission, within its purview, could only require monumentation of riverfront and/or buffer zone. But Rob, you raise a good point, which is that there are undeveloped areas beyond the limits of work within the parcel. And that would, I think, require coordination with the planning board.
Yep, and we're happy to do that. We feel in the end that that's going to be, a feather in the cap of this community to make sure that area stays pristine and maintains a buffer for not only the neighbors, but for the community itself.
One concern that comes to mind, again, because of other developments, not just in Easthampton, and perhaps it would be different with a condo association as opposed to a subdivision, management of yard waste and prohibition of dumping outside the limits of work in riverfront area or buffer zone, or isolate, it's not this commission's jurisdiction, but isolated wetlands. What provisions are in place for future management of landscaping activities?
So there will be, yep. So there will be no on-site landscape equipment. This will be all off-site landscape contractor, maintenance contractor, property manager. So there will be no storage of equipment. They'll come onto the site, they'll do the plowing, they'll come onto the site, they'll do the mowing, and per the contracts, typically, as is typical, they never leave the yard waste because it smells. The grass clippings can become very, very, very negative smell. So they basically take it off site and they handle it and they dispose of that legally and properly with the landscape company. But to the extent that a suggestion or even a condition, if it's applicable, or if you guys can incorporate it and feel comfortable with that, we don't have any problem with that. That's a great idea, and all of this will make its way into the homeowners association document. Any of these conditions and controls, either through the commission or through the planning board, will certainly make its way into the homeowners document, and everybody, when they buy their unit, will be provided this information. And we've even in the past had people display this in their garages, so that can be a requirement too, where each unit owner can't tell you that they've never heard of it because it's a requirement or a condition that those types of conditions are displayed in their garage, like under a little plastic plaque or something like that.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So I would like to, let's see, I think I'm going to do roll call for commission members. This is still not a natural format we're following. So let me get my list. Commissioner August, do you have any questions, comments, concerns you would like to express at this time?
Yes. I wanted to know if there was a overall idea of possibly reducing the size of the project and removing the units nearest the proposed tree line, pulling the project inward to have a smaller area of impact. That way you're further away from the slope. The abutters may find it more feasible. I was just wondering if there was any thought about that.
Through the chair, I could answer that if you like.
Thank you.
So we've looked closely, very closely at the design of this community. We do first, what we do is we do an existing conditions plan. We map all the wetlands. If you remember, we filed, I believe, an ANRAD or an RDA with the commission to determine those wetlands so that we know what we're starting with. And then based on that, we worked with the owner at length to design what we felt was a marketable community based on the unit styles and types that someone would want. We also are looking at providing a unit count that is marketable to be developed. Anything under a certain number of units is very difficult to develop because of the cost of the roads. So you kind of have to offset the cost of the roads with the unit count. This actually is quite a nice size as far as someone being interested in development. 18 units you can expect will be snatched up fairly quickly. But it's big enough that you can make enough money to do the project and make it profitable. So we were looking at citing that general number of units on the property that is also based on the density that's allowed under zoning. So we were very specific. We actually have a lot more upland area that could potentially be utilized, but because of the density allowed under zoning, we were limited at 18 units. As far as losing units, we do not have any interest in that, as you can imagine. For the proponent, obviously, and for to make the property as profitable as possible, because that is part of it. And we believe we meet the performance standards set forth in the Wetlands Protection Act for work in the buffer zone. So we don't see the need to reduce or eliminate units based on the Wetlands Protection Act. So that's kind of where we're at. We think we have a sustainable project that will respectfully be developed, partially in the buffer zone, but again, staying out of the resource area, specifically out of riverfront area, and will hopefully be something that we can all be proud of.
I just had another question. As far as the slope and the area near the slope, have you thought of plantings, fencing, or possibly putting in a living wall to protect the area and the abutter area below?
So the living wall, it's not steep enough for a living wall. We have spec'd those in the past. I think the perspective on the slope is, and where we're doing the actual disturbance, is maybe a little bit misrepresented. I wish I could, over the. I'm looking at this from my device here, so I'm not able to measure off of it. But I'd love to give you a slope because, a lot of these slopes are quite reasonable where we're working. As we get farther down the slope, you can see the contours get a lot tighter. That area will all remain vegetated, but the slopes are not steep enough for a living wall. We are planning any slopes over 3 to 1. Would certainly receive an erosion control blanket. There's a North American green product that we typically specify that gets, the slopes would get loamed and seeded and blanketed, and they would be maintained. The nice thing is this isn't something that if there's any little rivulets or erosion control erosion that needs to be controlled, all of that would be done by the homeowners association and handled, by a professional landscape management company. As far as the fencing, we do have, during construction, we have, I believe, a double barrier proposed there. If we don't, we would be happy. If it's just silt fence, we could certainly make sure that we have a straw bale barrier or even a erosion control log if it's seen as a more advantageous. I know oftentimes it's easier to clean up when you have straw bales, sometimes the cleanup can be a little bit difficult with the actual erosion controls themselves. But that said, I think fencing or any sort of limitations that are like a specific barrier, I wouldn't recommend. I think we want to let the wildlife pass through this community, and then that is a riparian corridor there. I don't think there's a need to cut these residents off. Typically in these communities, they're mature residents. I wouldn't expect a lot of school-age children in a community like this. Not to say they couldn't be there, but you're not going to have a lot of kids. And the older adults typically police any young children that might be messing around with anything. So I would expect that a fence would probably not be logical, but I do agree with monumenting that limit that you're talking about, to make sure that people know where it is, that it's properly signed, so that people know what can and can't be done. That, to me, that makes a lot of sense. But a fence barrier for that location seems like you'd want to let it be permeable to wildlife.
Well,
rather than
fencing or planting?
Yeah, planting. Yeah, we are planting. And there is a significant amount of mature vegetation along that edge that will remain. I mean, that whole slope is wooded. If you've been on I don't know if you went on the site visit, but that whole area is pretty well vegetated, except for the field.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Harwood, do you have any comments you would like to add at this time? Assuming, Deborah, you're good for the time being? Thank you.
I don't. I guess I'm still wondering about Dan's concerns about the formation of a dingle, and if there is anything we can do, just because it does seem like sort of unstable landscape. Which is not really a question for the applicant so much as, I guess, Melissa.
Well, it's tricky because that's, I think without a slope stability analysis, that's a large stormwater basin. And what is the total volume, theoretically, of an up to 100-year event in that basin? Can you,
I'd have
Rob,
to pull
do you know
that.
that off the top of your head?
No, I do not. We have it in the stormwater report. We might be able to find it if Sophia wants to rifle through that on her end, but I do not have that with me. But I mean, there's certainly significant volume that will be held in that basin. Can we go back to the plan first? Or I think we're on the plan. Can we go back to the grading plan? I mean, the basin could be shifted away from the slope. We'd be shifting back towards the other BVW a little bit closer. We could rotate it, and we have a lot of flexibility there. That is kind of the natural low point of the site. If you look at the grading next to the basin, so kind of like top left of the basin, you'll see that there's like this arrow, and then if you follow the arrow, there's a 91.5 to the left, Sophia. So, yep.
Could you zoom into that area, please?
Whoa. Okay. Sorry, I'm just getting my bearings again. My screen keeps moving. So if you look at, keeps moving again. 91.5 there is kind of a high point. So what's happening is we have water that, so the top of the basin is 91, then there's a 91.5. So if the water does rise up, you have all that additional storage up to the 91.5 spot grade, and then it would sheet flow to the left around the corner of Unit 14 over into that depression area for the isolated wetland, and eventually through the vegetated area, which is all going to remain around the isolated wetland, and then over to the slope. So the travel path is certainly well over 50 feet from the slope. It probably, is probably close to 130 or 140 feet from where it would, if you see where the label for silt fence and hay bale line is, upper left, right there. Right in that area is kind of where we would expect the water to then cascade down the slope if it, if and when it were ever to get there. So we're not talking about, a basin failure that goes over the edge of the slope. We're talking about, if the basin does hold more water, we have a foot of freeboard, and then we're, another, call it another 6 inches of freeboard before it slowly sheet flows to another low area and then down the slope, which is completely vegetated.
And I think in general, we're just more concerned about the groundwater and infiltrating and somehow breaking out and causing a problem on that slope, which would then, it would essentially be all over at that point. In terms,
I don't know that there's any evidence for that,
other than the introduced load, if that's the right term.
You're thinking the basin fails between the slope. I'm not following.
I'm thinking subsurface, not superficial. The concerns are subsurface, not superficial, causing some sort of slope failure.
I don't know why there would be.
The direction of groundwater flow would be toward the north.
Yeah, we don't. Our test bits, based on the soil evaluations that were done, don't indicate that, and I don't know where that. I know that the concern is other places in town, and I understand that there is a slope here, but I don't know where that concern is directly coming from, other than just a general concern about being near a slope. I don't know if we have evidence of a groundwater concern based on the stormwater basin and the design standards in the policy.
Well, the thing is, everybody's making risk-based decisions every day, Here with this site, we're building things at the top of a steep slope that has water at the bottom. We're introducing more water into it at this one particular spot. And so we are going to be increasing how much groundwater is migrating. So now water is sort of just entering the field wherever it's flowing down the slope. Some places entering the different resource areas. Now we're going to be taking the water falling at all different parts of the site and bringing it over to this basin in one spot, and then getting it all into the ground where it's going to want to try to flow towards the north, towards Hannah Brook. And the risk is, as it starts breaking out at the toe of the slope, that slope becomes less stable and potentially unstable. And what the chance of a slope failure happening there is, it's not zero, because nothing's ever zero, and it's not one either. It's not like it's definitely going to happen, but the question is where on that chart of where that continuum of uncertainty where you are with this slope. And given my experience with other places in town and other sites, this makes me nervous. And to me, there's the chance of the slope sliding and putting a lot of material in the wetlands to the north, and potentially working its way back and affecting the stormwater basin or one of the residents or something like that, is it's quite a bit higher than zero. And
so Dan, all due respect, I don't know where you're getting your data. I mean, you don't have data to support that. I understand it's a concern, but unless you have data to support that, I don't know if that's a real statement that should be made.
The world I work in, you assume risk and then you use analyses to work back from it and satisfy yourself that, you know, you're okay in this perspective. And so, like,
as we all do.
right, yep. And I'm just saying, I'm nervous in this case. I would be nervous in this case, given how close we are to the edge of the slope. So if we were stamping the plans, I would not stamp them until I could see a slope stability analysis, I believe. I'm not stamping these drawings. So, you know, I don't have that concern, you know, I'm not dealing with that kind of risk, but, you know, we are concerned about the resource areas here.
Yep.
And, you know, I'll just say it again, it makes me nervous. And I'm not sure I could vote yes without seeing, you know, yes to approve the project without seeing more information about how that slope will perform.
Did it lock up, or you just stop?
I stopped.
Okay, me too. I'm just listening.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. It's my opinion, and other commissioners may feel differently. I'm not opposed to the project on its merits or anything like that. I think you've answered all the other concerns that have come up, other than this one. And, you know, if I abstain from the project or vote no and everybody else votes yes, you know, it goes forward and maybe there's no problem. You know, I just don't know what the chance is that there's no problem.
Understood and respected. And we get that. One of the thoughts that comes to mind through the chair. It's okay.
Melissa, it's Mike. Did DEP provide comments, and what were their recommendations or concerns?
Is this on?
Melissa, you muted.
There's low battery.
Sorry, I didn't realize. So I'm trying to pull up. Cassie, could you share DEP's comments on the screen?
Yeah, I can do that for sure. And I just didn't know. I know Rob had indicated that he wanted to say just in response to Dan's last comment. So while I'm doing that, he can make
awesome.
a comment while I'm holding.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure the chair was okay with that. Yeah, so one of the things that does come to mind as I hear Dan's concerns, just looking at it graphically, the basin is rectangular in shape. There's no reason why it couldn't be reshaped in my mind. I do believe we have enough test pits to do so. We could probably pull it back if we can just, I don't know.
I'm sorry, am I the only one who lost Rob there?
Rob, you muted again.
Oh, can you hear me?
No. Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so I don't know if you heard what I said. So the thought was that the basin could potentially be reshaped and shifted away from the slope fairly significantly, I would expect. It does not have to be a rectangular shape. We have a lot of flexibility because of the nature of that meadow. It's fairly flat. So I think we could look at pulling the basin back. Now that said, you know, at some point there would be, you know, it might not be the 6.5-inch rainfall event in 24 hours, but there's some event, I'm sure, someday that causes an overflow. So, you know, that area, obviously, at some point, that area does get inundated and may overflow. In which case, you know, that slope is still going to be there. but at least we can move it away. And if it's a groundwater concern, or if it's a concern of, you know, certain layers of material, you know, if you have a permeable layer and then you have a lens of some silty or clay type material that you're worried about breaking out onto that slope, at least we could shift it away. I think we could probably, you know, just looking at it graphically, we could probably get it, you know, another 40 or 50 feet away from that slope by reshaping it without too much trouble.
I think I'd like to see that schematically on a revised drawing. I feel like this is too concerning a question relative to put everything off unless and until there's an impact. Whatever we can do to move it away from and see what's feasible about getting it as far away from that slope as possible would be, I think, a benefit.
And I can also kind of quantify what additional storage we could potentially create above and beyond the design storm that we've already designed for.
Okay. I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I want to continue going down the line of commissioners here. Commissioner Ryan, do you have any questions, comments, thoughts you'd like to add to this discussion at this time?
No, I think I got my questions answered. I think I'm set.
Thank you. Have I missed anyone? Is there anyone who's thought of something on the commission who has thought of something they'd like to add to the discussion?
It's Commissioner Whittemore. I just like the DEP comments to be addressed, if that was in any of the documents, what their concerns were with the project.
Yeah.
I think that was dated the end of July, so.
So I don't know if Rob or Sophia, if you have a written response to the DEP comments generated. I sent the comments. It was interesting because he sent his, the DEP sent their normal list of comments and then also sent additional comments. I compiled those and sent those to Ryan Nelson. So if, I can pull up those comments now and we can just speak to him, or if you already have something prepared, that's fine. You can share it however you want to go about it.
Through the chair, Rob, I don't have the DEP comments prepared. I don't know if we want Cassie to share them and you can address them one by one. Sorry, it looks like you're muted again, Rob.
I would add on there, if you're going to provide a revised stormwater basin site plan layout, then it might make sense to respond in writing at that time, rather than, unless you care to go off the cuff.
Oh, that's fine. I think at this point, I think we have a little bit of redesign work to look at. I do know that we have a response to the comments because I went through it with Ryan. However, those might change a little bit anyway, given the the redesign. So I would be happy to, assuming no additional comments, respectfully request a continuance from the commission so that we could address the major concerns about stormwater basin. I'll look at rotating that unit to see if it is possible to rotate. I think it was 16 and 17, I believe it was. But yeah, we'd be happy to address those design concerns and try to come back to you with something that hopefully is a little more palatable from a stormwater point of view.
Okay. So with that, Commissioner Whittemore, does that make sense to you?
It does. We can
Thank
pick
you.
it up next time.
So with that, Cassie, I don't think, were there being any further questions, comments from the commission at this time? I think we are going to open it to public comment, and I asked Cassie to manage that process.
Right. And there was a couple other questions, and these are a little bit smaller, that were from the last meeting that I had compiled from the minutes that we had requested an answer to, that weren't yet covered at this meeting. I don't know if you want me to just add that to the list that I'm going to generate from this meeting that I send them, or if you want to try to go over them now.
If we could, I would like to go over them now. I think we've seen those, so I should be able to address those.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, that's all right with you, Melissa.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first thing is that a second site visit was conducted on the 27th of July, but I was the only one who attended. I did take pictures if anyone wants to see that. Those pictures, I know that the previous site visit had pictures that more pertain to the open areas. This second site visit that I conducted, I took pictures of tried to get good pictures of the sloped area, but it, like Rob was saying, it is very vegetated. So I don't know if it does this, like shows that area well. I can show them now if anyone would like. They are available to the commissioners through the file network. That was the first thing, if anyone wants to see those. Okay, cool. The next question, the first clarification that was requested at the last meeting that I haven't received yet was a calculation of the total area of disturbance, which includes a detail within it about the amount of disturbance that will occur within the buffer zone. So just the actual straight numbers of those two compared numbers. I don't know if that is something that makes more sense to provide at the next meeting, since it might potentially be changes based off.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay. Next question was, there was requested clarification on whether or not the project is intended to be completed in phases or not. And if not, what the justification for not completing the work in that manner may be.
So the work would not be completed. So let me back up. So the roadway would be done in one phase. The roadway is small enough that we would expect that binder would be down in one construction effort. So they would do all the utilities, all those water, sewer, the stormwater, and then they would get binder down, and then the construction would go typically duplex by duplex, so that they would probably do 4 at a time potentially, where they had one model unit, a unit to sell, and then 2 others under construction at one point. So we would expect that there is the possibility that marketing goes well and that these things fly off the shelves, in which case you could have more than that. But I would say a minimum of 4 units being constructed at one time. Given the current absorption rates, even with COVID-19, we're seeing that we're seeing condo projects with anywhere from 4 to 6 units every 6 months or so. So could be up to 8 or 12 units per year. That can obviously change, but we would expect this to be probably a 2.5 to 3 year project, and then they'd be closing out and turning over to the homeowners association within 3 years, probably 3 to 4 years.
Just as a follow-up, with the grading associated with the site work, would that all undergo at one time, or would they do that with each unit as well?
So the general grading for all the grading for the roadway and adjacent areas would be completed. We would loam and seed, and then as units are opened up for construction, they would be regraded as the finished floors are set. Foundations are put in, the finished floors are set, and then they would be regraded and then restabilized. So we would expect that they would kind of be opened up initially, stabilized, and then opened up as we go, within a reasonable vicinity of the actual construction. So maybe 30 or so feet around the unit would be reopened, and there'd be a little damage to the ground plane that would have to be repaired, and that would be regraded as the units go in, per the plan, but just regraded as those go in.
Right. Just administratively, I know that in the past, in our order of conditions that we did issue, we've had a requirement for a pre-construction meeting and a number of pre-construction just items generally. And I'm not sure, this might be more of a question for Melissa, that in this instance where each unit is being built, you kind of, when that is called for and not kind of in one go, if that we would require multiple pre-construction visits for each unit, or if we would have just one overarching one with an understanding of, how that would go forward for each other unit. I wasn't sure if that had been tackled in the past before.
Not really, I think not much in this particular commission grouping's tenure. And I think in general, without being specific to this project, I think it would, if there is that phased an approach to any project, I would think we would want to revisit that opportunity to review requirements and expectations on a unit by unit or site by site basis, lot by lot basis. So I think that there would be, for a project such as this, there would reasonably be the potential for more than one on-site pre-construction meeting, depending on phasing.
Okay.
And I would, if administratively as that gets done, I would refer to the building numbers. We have unit numbers, but we could add building numbers, or like maybe it's letters, building A, B, C, so on, might make it easier, so that typically what will happen is, there'll be 2 units per building, but you would want to see, you'd want to have the pre-construction before the building gets started. It might be for, 2 units, but it's 1 building.
I see.
And we can add that to the plan for the next time, so we can have another way to reference the buildings.
I don't know if anyone else, the commissioners, had any questions about that phasing at all before I move on to the next one. Okay. The next question, which I think this was mentioned just briefly earlier, but maybe it would be good to speak to it more. There was a request last time for a clarification on whether or not the units will include basements, and then within that, whether excavated material and then generally just felled trees are planned to be stockpiled during just construction, if there's a location for that as well during that phase.
Yep, so there will be basements. It's hard to sell units in New England without basements. We found that out on a few projects. So the excavated material would be stockpiled temporarily and would be subject to the stormwater pollution prevention plan that would need to be required. This does encompass an area over an acre. So we would detail that out. We could certainly provide that to the commission. As far as stockpile areas, I would expect that probably temporarily inside the limit of the, we could probably pick 1 or 2 units that are not in an area subject to stormwater flows or minimal stormwater flows, and then do that. So I'll kind of pick an area and show that on the plan for next time. But also, I would say that the contractor would likely have their own ideas on that, because the world according to Rob and my crystal ball isn't always so clear. So I would say if we could condition that a plan be provided when the SWIP is prepared, and be provided by the contractor who actually does the work, because a lot of times they might want to deviate from what I show, but still might be a good idea, a good plan, just different.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't know if anybody else has any questions about that point. I'm just taking some notes, hold on. Okay, let's see. One of the questions was an explanation of what provisions will be taken to ensure planned grading, which facilitates runoffs, will be maintained. You already addressed that question. I just wanted to know, just make a note that that was one of them, but that's covered. Let's see. We also already discussed snow removal. That was another point. And then the last 2 we've already covered as well. The last 2 was comments from the city engineer regarding the stormwater application, and then also the DEP comments. So it looks like both of those, or one of the city engineer ones were addressed today. The DEP comments will be addressed at the next meeting, if that sounds correct to everyone. And I don't know if this is the right time to ask this question as well, but similar to the last project for the stormwater permit from the city, I believe Dan might be able to speak to this, if that would be something that is issued in this instance by the commission as opposed to the planning board.
Yes, this would be the Conservation Commission's responsibility in this case.
Okay. And I didn't know if there was any other extra steps associated with that that I would necessarily need to take, or the commission.
Usually we make a separate motion. There's got 2 findings in it. There's a stormwater bond requirement, but sometimes that just gets to be the same bond as the planning board needs, so some coordination is needed there. I think the bond amount is based on the value of the stormwater system to be installed. And the city engineer has sort of come up with those guesstimates in the past. So there's probably some coordination needed with the city engineer and planning board to figure out those details.
All right, that makes sense. I've been partnering with Jeff Bagg, who's works with the planning board closely, so I can do that. I'll make sure we get that squared away.
Okay.
That's all the comments, questions that I had from the previous meeting from commissioners. If there are no other questions from the commission, we can move on to public comment. I just want to make sure everyone's ready for that.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, great. So the way that I'm probably going to go about this, I believe majority of, I can see some people who are here for other items that they've explained to me. And I know that a lot of the people on the call right now are related to that. I think probably what I'll do is the same as last time, where I'll call out to each attendee and we'll give you some time to speak. If you have any comments, if you have no comments, it would be great if you could say, I have no comments. Otherwise, if we don't hear from you for a time, I'll move on to the next person, if that is all right with Melissa.
Yes, and I would just like to reiterate, both for the commission and the public's benefit, that the commission's purview is limited to the Wetlands Protection Act, and that means wetland resource areas such as bordering vegetated wetlands and riverfront area, particularly at this site, and the 100-foot buffer zone. We do not have jurisdiction over isolated wetlands, and they do not get a buffer zone. The commission can entertain comments concerned with the interests of the act in our jurisdiction.
Okay, that sounds good.
It looks like we've lost Ra. Oh no, there he is. Okay, I see him.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to go down the list here. Hold on just a second. Yeah, also alternatively, people can use a raise their hand function, though I know if you don't know how to do that, I'm going to come around just in case. But yeah, if you know you definitely have a comment and you know how to use the raise your hand function, that would be helpful for anyone members of the public. But first here, I have a caller, someone accessing the meeting by phone. The phone number is 413-570-5142. You should have the ability to, I'm going to unmute you now, and you can make a comment if you have any, or let us know that you do not have any comments. You are now unmuted.
Yes, this is John Bader.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm the president of the Piscoma Conservation Trust, and I just want to say that, you know, we've been getting concerns from the neighbors around there. I guess it seems that some of the neighbors, or maybe more than some, are concerned about this project. It's can obliterate the whole area there. It's a very bucolic field, for one thing, and it's a great habitat for wildlife. I know that much. And they've seen bears and fox and everything else in that section. And I can't see just stacking in 18 units in there at once. It's just a little bit too much. And I understand that, you know, putting in less units is less profitable, of course, because of the rules and everything, but there must be some way you can come to a compromise there, at least. I guess that's all I have to say for right now.
Thank you for your comments. I don't know if commissioners want to say anything or anyone else.
Thank you for your comments. We'll look forward to the revised drawings that we are expecting for our next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I will add a note. I know you said you're associated with the Piscomic Land Trust. I have a written comment from the Piscomic Land Trust that I'll be sharing at the end of this process.
Great. Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and mute you now, if that's all right with you.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, next in line I have a caller, someone calling in. They're on the phone. The phone number is 508-517-6470. I'm going to unmute you now. If you have any comments, please let us know. And if you don't have any comments, also let us know.
Hi, this is Steve Herzog calling in for the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
Sorry, Kathy.
It's okay. No, I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Thanks for letting us know.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Okay, next person I see on here, I believe this person may be associated with the owner of the property, Bill Stepler. I'm going to unmute you. If you have any comments, you're welcome to make them now. You're unmuted. Oh, or you might have to unmute yourself, but if you don't have any comments, that's totally fine.
I'm all set. Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay. Next participant I see is someone named Brenda Saylor. If you have any comments, I'm going to unmute you now.
Hi, I'm here for the next item. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. I see someone, it just says Kathy's iPad. I'm going to unmute you now if you have any comments. Hi, Kathy. It shows you as unmuted. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say otherwise. Okay. I don't know if you're experiencing technical difficulties either, you can feel free to try to send me something in the chat and we'll come back around.
Hey, Kathy, it's Mike. Can we just unmute everybody?
We can do that, but I just don't know. It might create a lot of cross chatter potentially. And the way that Zoom works, unfortunately, if there's cross chatter, it cancels out the next person. So to avoid that, if people have background noise going on.
Yeah, it just might take a while.
Hey, Cassie, it's Brenda. I can say that Kathy is for the next item as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess if Melissa, if you want to do it another way, or you guys want to do it another way, we can. I only have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, I only have 5 other people.
Perhaps if there's anyone who wants to comment on this from the public, if you could use the raise hand function.
Yeah, to do that,
please do so that we can, be considerate of everyone's time at this point.
Yeah, just the instructions on how to do that. If you move your cursor, you can see the bar at the bottom, usually where you can mute or unmute yourself. There's a participant section, and you select that, and in the top left, there should be, or on your screen near your name, there should be a raise hand function, or below. I'll go ahead and actually also and read the written comment from Piscomic Land Trust, just so people can have some time to work with that, and I'll come back and see if anybody raised their hand. Okay, so the comment was, Okay. So one of the comments that I received relates to long-term viability of the drainage scheme. This is the beginning of the written comment. It says, please excuse my likely misuse of technical terms in the following. Despite my ignorance about civil engineering matters, I believe that this deserves careful examination. It seems the project's approach to stormwater control is to pipe almost all runoff from buildings' roofs underground to a single containment basin. The exception is the rear portion of units 4 through 7, which is directed to a rip-wrapped open outfall, less than 20 feet from the steep slope leading down to Hannum Brook. That component of the plan itself is a concern, in parentheses. By very rough calculation, the leaders from the front exposures and other units extend as much as 800 feet to the basin. The system includes a number of right angle turns and numerous T and less acute junctions. Despite this, the design appears to incorporate no clean outs. My understanding is that street drainage systems utilizing catch basins and sediment traps require regular maintenance. I recollect hearing that maintenance is often neglected, particularly when a system is under private association rather than municipal maintenance. The potential for sand and silt coming off the roofs is, of course, lower than from the street, though my experience with leaves and other debris suggests they are just as likely to obstruct pipes. Furthermore, the proposed drainage network of smaller diameter pipe and with less direct lines of flow may be more prone to blockages than a stormwater system serving a street. If the roof drainage system becomes blocked, any upstream flow would be added to the ground flow to be handled by other drainage structures. This could cause problems both on the built site and could perhaps lead to water flowing beyond the basin comprising the design development footprint. Given that maintenance requirements and the potential for neglect, please ask the Conservation Commission and Planning Board to examine the proposed roofed and stormwater drainage systems with its long-term viability and the consequences of any failure in mind. Thanks sincerely for the opportunity to comment. So that was the first one. Okay, and I don't know if there's any comment. I'll move on to the next written comment I received. Okay. So this comment is from the Piscomic Conservation Trust, and it goes as followed. Dear Planning Board and Conservation Commission members, after further review of the site for the proposed development, we would like to make the following additional observations, as well as emphasize several zoning and master plan provisions we believe should be considered in reviewing this project. As was noted during prior public meetings, each building or unit has only minimal yard space, and several of the buildings are located immediately adjacent to the slopes above Hannum Brook, or quite close to existing houses or other project units. We are quite concerned that this paucity will only increase pressure on the immediately adjacent natural areas in the form of built encroachments such as decks, recreational activity, informal paths, and other commonly observed forms of disturbance and degradation of natural habitats. There are also no apparent provisions made for disposal of yard waste, which we frequently see dumped into neighboring natural areas, even by homeowners with ample space on their own property. Furthermore, we note that no plan has been presented for disposition of, management of, or use of the land outside of the development footprint. It appears from our reading of the zoning code that some sort of protection of the remaining open space is a requirement for the granting of a special permit. Unfortunately, the extent and proposed configuration of the development and the site's essentially landlocked situation, surrounded by continuous private house lots and the brook, leave little opportunity for broader public access. Reaching the undeveloped portion of the Hannum Brook Conservation Area would require a trail traversing immediately below the buildings, which would not be desirable for either residents or visitors. At the same time, some sort of permanent city protection from the remaining area, short of a general public access, is advisable. One possibility to address all of these concerns is a permit condition requiring a plan not only for protection of, but also for use of the undeveloped portion to relieve the potential for misuse of the area along the brook. Enforce through the city a conservation restriction. This plan could include a common recreation area such as a small playground, a short neighborhood trail in the woods, or small landscaped garden, and most important for preservation of the neighboring natural area, a well-defined and confined shared location to receive brush and lawn clippings generated by the units. We believe the following sections, excerpted from the zoning ordinance and the city's current master plan, are of possible relevance to the planning board's consideration of the special permit for this development. Finally, we have attached a sketch of the site plan superimposed with an aerial photograph of the area and two images of the project site as seen from the end of the trail at Hannum Brook Conservation Area. Thanks once again for your consideration of these points. Sincerely, Garrett Stover, Volunteer Land Conservation Advisor, on behalf of the Board of Directors, Pascomic Conservation Trust. I don't know if it seems like I should not read the attached zoning ordinance. It's not applicable to the situation for the commission's concerns. And then there's also the excerpts from the master plan. I don't believe there's any additional comments added to that. I don't think that I should read that as well, or?
Again, they're all valid concerns and points. It's just not within this commission's purview to make a finding based on those things. We're limited to the Wetlands Protection Act itself and essentially where activities are proposed within that jurisdiction.
Okay.
So it's somewhat limiting. I do believe that some of the concerns expressed were similar to those that the commission discussed earlier, such as yard waste management, which was addressed, potential future encroachments, which was somewhat addressed in the discussion of an obligation to provide permanent monumentation and other. I'm not sure if deed language to be included in deeds is an option. I know that's been used elsewhere in this town, in the city. Some sort of recurring reminder. The fact that there's a condo association as opposed to individual homeowners, subdivision versus condo. Again, those things are typically beyond the purview of this commission. But these are, I think it's worth discussing with, if you could take some of these up with the city planner to find out where they can be addressed elsewhere.
I see. Okay. Yeah, and I know that those comments have been shared with the planning board as well.
Great.
Okay.
Could I briefly just speak to a couple of those?
Certainly.
So in general, the idea of placing or having some control over the open space makes sense. Obviously, as part of the homeowners association, that's easy to execute. Beyond that, a conservation restriction on the land, which is private property and would be owned by the homeowners association, is not necessarily something that I think anybody necessarily wants to pursue. Certainly want the land to remain vegetated, open, and for the passive recreation of the residents that live there. I don't believe that typically homeowners associations do not want to have people have access to their property, typically for liability purposes and other purposes. So I would expect that would not be something that would be overly palatable to the proponent. But we will review the remaining ideas, and I think that those are, something that could be incorporated.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess if anybody else has a comment they'd like to make, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now. It's probably the best way to go about it.
Not seeing anyone unmuting themselves or raising their hands, I suggest we, Rob, we're going to continue this to our August 24th meeting at 6 p.m. Is that acceptable?
That would be great. Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great. That'll give us time to respond.
Excellent. Is there a motion to continue to August 24th at 6 p.m.?
A motion to continue to August 24th at 6 p.m.
Is there a second? Roll call vote. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner August. Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner, thank you. Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item. Request for amended order of conditions, Mass DEP file number 1510293, filed by Wood Environment and Infrastructure, Inc., on behalf of Easthampton Park Solar 1 LLC at 232 Park Street, map 165, lot 3.1, for proposed modifications to the wetland replication areas. Commissioner Whittemore, are you recusing yourself from this item?
I am recusing myself, but I'd like to do a public comment at the end.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak to this item at this time?
Yes, this is Steve Herzog calling from Wood, representing Easthampton Park Solar. Calling in because my internet connection has been a little bit spotty, so I'm just on the phone.
Oh,
would you like me to present?
Will you please? Yes. And if there's a visual that you would like the agent to share for the rest of us, please let us know.
Sure. So we submitted a letter request, which also included 3 photos and several drawing sheets.
Okay.
So Cassie, if you have those drawing sheets available, you could bring those up.
All right, I'm pulling those up now. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
And just for my own, Cassie, did the commissioner receive proof of a butter notification?
Yes, we did. And also got, let's see. Yeah, everything should be in order in that regard.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now. This is the submitted letter. And I don't know if first where we want to start, Steve. I can scroll down to the images or the plans if you'd like, or we can go through from the top.
Well, let me give a little overview, and maybe we could start with. We go right to the first drawing sheet, which is C101. So I spoke about this matter to the commission. I believe it was in the June online matter hearing. I requested your permission to present this as a request for amendment rather than a notice of intent. So the drawing sheet shows, if you recall this project, it's a solar project off of Park Street, and there's a access road that crosses White Brook, and it also crosses the BVW. And the solar project is essentially complete, the construction. The only thing remaining is the construction of the 2 wetland replication areas. Those 2 crossings, one of White Brook and one of the BVW farther to the east, produced wetland impacts, and we proposed wetland replication to compensate for those. This request for amendment we're presenting because 2 reasons. Both impact areas were significantly smaller than initially proposed. The one at White Brook was reduced because the contractor was able to make the road, place the road at a lower elevation over the new replacement culvert so that there was no significant side slope incursion into the BVW adjacent to White Brook. So if you're looking at C101, the inset, it's kind of in the center of the sheet, so the left of the 2 insets, shows that little rectangle is the new culvert. And there we have proposed up to 846 square feet of BVW impact. The total impact was only 89 square feet. At the other crossing, which is in the right inset, the road was realigned to hug the northern property boundary and cross it as a narrower part of the BVW. So our original impact was proposed at 1,276. The actual impact there was 191. So that's the first. Well, the two parts of our request for amendment are, one, to reduce the area of the wetland replication areas that we will construct, and two, to what we discussed in June, the first one, idea was to relocate the wetland replication area in the left inset, so adjacent to White Brook, to place it together with the second replication area and just construct one replication area instead of two. And our rationale for that request was because we didn't have adequate topography far north of that access road, and it turns out that the topography is rather steep to the west side of the BVW, and it would pose some constructability issues and also a threat of slope instability that could pose a threat of erosion into the BVW and to White Brook. So again, two parts of the request. One, we'd like to relocate that small 89 square foot impact, the compensation by the replication area, to combine it with the one on the east. And two, we'd like to reduce the area, the total area of wetland replication, to correspond with the area of actual impact. In the letter, I stated that the total impact is 280 square feet, and we are proposing a wetland replication area of 420, which is 1.5 times the area of actual impact. So that's an overview, and I'd be happy to answer questions or go into more detail on the request.
Can you describe what is the nature of existing conditions where the currently proposed wetland replication area is to be constructed?
You said the currently proposed, the one adjacent to White Brook?
So the way you're showing it here with the request.
Pardon? The way we...
To flag, what are the existing conditions adjacent to flags 11 through 14, where it's currently proposed combined wetland replication area?
Okay, the proposed combined area. Okay, sure. Cassie, there is a photo attachment with 3 photographs, and the third of those, which is on the 9th page of the PDF, is a view from the access road of that proposed combined replication area. So right now it's a meadow. It grades gradually into the BVW. It's relatively flat. It's a pretty gentle grade. And let's see, I had it written in the letter what it was, what the dominant vegetation was. Let's see if I can find that. It's dominated by herbaceous species and shrub and vine species at the edges, including some invasive multiflora rose and oriental bittersweet. There's also some red osier dogwood and staghorn sumac. And the herbaceous stratum is oriental bittersweet seedlings, rubus species, goldenrod, particularly west end goldenrod, jewelweed, and some sensitive fern. So it's a moist meadow, but it grades to the wetland there. So we don't think it'll be too difficult to reduce the elevation there a little bit to obtain hydrology and seed it with a wetland seed mix and plant some woody wetland shrubs.
Cassie, can you go to where the plant community is, the proposed plant community is described? And you said this area is roughly 420 square feet?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And so what kind of excavation grading is going to be necessary to achieve the hydrology? I'm assuming this is groundwater driven, seasonal high groundwater.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So we're proposing to excavate at a range of depths from shallower at the BVW side to deeper at the southwest away from the BVW, up to 24 inches down, and place 6 to 12 inches of organic rich topsoil. And so we do expect that we would have shallow groundwater at that location, but also we have a stormwater basin immediately adjacent to the solar array that would be west of this replication area. There's the stormwater basin, then the replication area, then the DPW. So we may get some contribution from accumulation of stormwater in that basin. But to answer your question, up to 24 inches below grade.
Mm-hmm. And you're proposing all native species. So, and then what is the plan for that excavated material? Where will that be disposed?
That's a good question. There is plenty of area on the site that has been disturbed upland that has been seeded, so we could grade it out on site in upland areas, or if we can't find the inadequate area, it could be removed off site. What we intend to do, though, is use the topsoil. If there's the organic rich topsoil in that upland right now varies in depth, it's a few inches, but ideally we'd like to preserve that, amend that with compost, and reuse that topsoil as the wetland topsoil. So some of it would stay on site, some of it could be relocated away from that area or relocated off site.
And what is you mentioned some invasive species. Could you describe the aspect of the monitoring plan moving forward to manage invasive species at this location within the replication area itself?
Well, we intend to remove all existing vegetation, so there may still be bittersweet and multiflora rose at the perimeter. The bittersweet should not invade the wetland because that's not a wetland species. It doesn't. But if it does, we intend to monitor and would remove it by hand as needed for the first 2 years after installation.
Okay. Are there questions from other commission members at this time?
Nope.
Commissioner Ryan, August, Harwood?
Questions from the community?
I would like to give commission members an opportunity before we switch over to the public. So if
I'm all set. We did a site visit with Cassie a few weeks ago.
Okay. Commissioner August, do you have any comments?
I just had a question about the invasives. They're just going to remove multifloral rose for the 2 years? Are there any other invasives? Is there anything that we need to have them do for the invasives?
So the intent of removing the invasives, or the 2 years, is that the goal of the regulations is that there's 75% vegetation, native vegetation, or a vegetated community by the end of 2 years. And if there's not, then what corrective actions are proposed. It's not that the project's necessarily achieved wetland replication status or status as a wetland resource area after 2 years as an automatic. There needs to be, that's why they're required to monitor, and keeping the invasives out is one way of achieving the planned vegetative community. And it's up to the applicant or the proponent to do their best to ensure that that happens, and it's up to the commission to evaluate whether or not that's been successful. So part of that is removing invasives, but essentially it should be a functioning, the goal is for it to be a functioning wetland. There's typically not a requirement to manage for invasives in perpetuity.
I did have one other question. So before Mr. Hrdd came in, we were told that there was a 700 square foot difference in that first wetland to be replicated. Is there a way that he can confirm for us that this is the correct square feet and that this is the right number?
Mr. Hrdd, can you speak to that?
Sure. I did go out and located remaining existing wetland flags and tape measured distance from the impact area from the roadside slopes. And so it was done by a field measurement. And as someone mentioned, there was a site visit that Cassie attended, and I think she observed as well that we did not push those slopes into the wetland. It was really just the impact, the inlet and the outlet of the new culvert to cause that 89 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Harwood, do you have any comments to add before we open it to the public?
Not right now.
Okay. Cassie, will you please open it to public comment?
Okay, sorry, I was muted. I'm stopped sharing my screen, but if anyone wants me to go back to any of those items or pictures from the site visit, please let me know. I believe a lot of the remaining people here are for this item. And so I don't know if you all have the ability to use the hand function, but we can probably start. I know Brenda Saylor, you had said that you were here for this item, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, thanks. It's Brenda Salyer. I live at 21 Holly Circle, and I'm an abutter to the project. I had a question about the WRA construction items relating to plantings, watering, and replacement and maintenance. Some of the conditions for the special permit was that trees were to be planted and maintained, and a majority of those died a few months ago. So I'm just a little concerned about the WRA construction plan because the other plantings didn't turn out so well and they weren't maintained. So how is this plan going to be monitored differently?
Hrdd, would you care to respond?
Yeah. Yes, I'd be happy to address that. I believe she is speaking about the screening trees that were installed along the access road where there are houses that can see the access road. That was a requirement of our planning board special permit. And my understanding is the contractor intends to replace those trees, but not right now in the midsummer, would do it in the fall planting season. So with regard to the WRA, we will be monitoring those, as we said, for the first 2 growing seasons after installation to ensure survival, and we will replace any failed plants likewise.
Is it the same contractor?
I believe it will be, yes.
Okay, good. So you're going to get to those trees eventually?
Yes.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whittemore, would you care to comment?
I've got a few comments. Number one being, the discussion for here is to do replication area for wetland areas. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there's a stream going through the property that hasn't been delineated, issue number 1. So that impacts the property. There's been flooding on the property. I've documented flooding all over the property, going all over the place. So that's it.
Can you elaborate on the location of this undelineated stream?
White Brook has 2 streams. It's on GIS database, and it goes through the middle of the property that hasn't been documented, and they want to reduce the size You guys still hear me?
I'm sorry, you went blank there for a moment there. The last I heard was to reduce the size?
No, there's a stream going through the property that hasn't been delineated. White Brook.
Right. Where is it relative? Where do you observe this relative to White Brook?
Connect. I have pictures. There's flooding on the whole property, but that's it. I keep getting disconnected, but
okay.
Excuse me, Ms. Chairman, may I comment?
Sure.
Please.
I think perhaps the gentleman is referring to on the south side of our wetland crossing of White Brook. There is a wide floodplain area, and the panel of White Brook comes approximately due south, meanders, but there is a second area of surface water that I saw when we were delineating a couple of years ago. And it's not part of the mainstream, and also that area is off of the property. It's south of the property line. So we only hung delineation flags on the property. One series delineating the BBW boundary, and a second series demarcating the banks of White Brook. From the property line to the culvert.
That stream comes right up through the property. It's 5 feet wide.
Well, I may be mistaken in that presumption that that's where you mean.
I have drone photos and videos of it. So, okay. Remember, this is the public of Easthampton talking. You know, I can produce videos and anything you need.
Michael, is this something that you could perhaps work with Cassie to identify a location for further evaluation and discussion by the commission? Because without knowing exactly where this is relative to the resource areas that were delineated, it's difficult to visualize.
Yeah. For the commission, I'm exempt because I'm a butter to a butter. So this is in my backyard. So I go back there and I check it out. And I know the whole land. So Cassie, I'll leave it up to you. I think I gave you information. So
yeah, Mike, maybe we could yeah, we can try to do a site visit or look at it. I think it's just that we would like it'd be easier to see like indicated directly on the plans, something like that, what you're hypothesizing. So
perhaps an orca photo.
Right. Yeah. So we can work together in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm all done. Thank you. Thank you,
Are there
Easthampton Conservation Commission. I'm all done.
Are there any other members of the public who would care to comment at this time? All right. With that, the commission has a request in front of them. I think, Michael, the concerns raised by the public are perhaps a separate matter entirely. The request is to amend the order of conditions relative to reduced construction period BVW impacts. They were less than was originally anticipated, and to modify the wetland replication area, square footage, and location relative to those reduced actual impacts. Is there any further discussion from the commission? In the event that there is not, is there a motion regarding this request to amend the order of conditions?
I'll make a motion to issue an amended order of conditions to allow a reduction in the BVW replication area to the quantity requested and for consolidation of the two replication areas into one.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, roll call vote. Commissioner August?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have a representative from this site who would like to discuss. So this is more to do with the project updates list. But since I'm here and waiting, I was hoping we could take their item out of turn at this moment.
Certainly. Motion to take item 4, oh boy, I, out of order. Anyone? Bueller?
Move to take item 4I out of order.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
So the motion carries. Item 4I. Easthampton Park Solar 1 LLC, 232 Park Street, Mass. DEP file number 151293, large scale solar project. Permit expires November 27th, 2021. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sahil Sirvanshi. I'm the project manager for the contractor, the EPC contractor with CS Energy.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'll just present my case because it's actually my first time, so I apologize if I'm breaking any rules or order here.
No, you have the floor. Please share with us your information.
So Cassie and I had this discussion previously. You and Steve pointed out that the current status of the site is, we are currently stable in terms of all construction. Last construction activity took place midweek, 6/29 1, I believe. And since then, no activity has taken place as far as soil disturbance goes. We have been rigorously doing the environmental monitoring and SWIP monitoring every time there's a rain event or as required by the order of conditions. However, wanted to request if we could put a temporary pause, because we do have to do the wetland replication area, which would still fall under the jurisdiction. But up until we do get approval and we want to start that, we would like to request a pause for the on until Monday.
So you're wondering, so I guess our conditions relative to routine updates, you're wondering if you can get some relief from that temporarily until activities resume?
That is correct.
Okay, and Cassie, we talked about this in general terms of if they're at a reduced inspection frequency under the SWIP because of lack of construction activities and site stability. You know, that in general cases that would be something that the commission would want to hear about before making such a finding.
Yep, I remember that discussion, and we did, when I did the site visit for the previous item, the request for amended order conditions, we also included in that a review of the site stability. I took pictures of all the reseeding of the area. We also took pictures of each basin area as well. And I don't know if Steve is still here, if he wants to speak to that more, or Jay also accompanied me on the site visit. But I can also display the images I took at that time if you'd like.
Is the site stable?
To me, it appeared to be so. I mean, it was quite seeded. Everything was growing nicely. There wasn't any loose soil stockpiled anywhere or exposed soil, as far as I could see.
I agree.
Okay. So Cassie, what in particular, could you refresh my memory? Do you know what condition number this is?
I want to say it might be 15. Hold on, let me double check.
Or
there is the ability for, there is language in there for a request to suspend reporting to us if the site is stable. I'm going to pull up the exact wording right now, but I know that we had previously discussed that SWIP reporting may still be required by the EPA, or there might be some kind of a final closeout required with them for that side of it. So I don't know if the SWIP still requires reporting, even if we say we're good with the receiving them.
Right, they're two separate issues, even though they're somewhat related in their technical content.
Okay. Okay, let's see here.
Melissa, it's Mike. Can you just reiterate which one we're talking about? Because I got cut off.
This is still the solar project at 232 Park Street. We took item 4I, no, I'm sorry, 5I. I apologize. 6I.
Is this 232?
This is a compliance update where the proponent is requesting temporary suspension of weekly update requirements per the order of conditions because the site is stable and there is no activity at this location at this time.
232?
Yes.
Do I have to recuse myself again?
Yes, please.
I'm recusing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I found the condition. It's condition 33. I don't know if you want me to read it out.
Yes, please.
Okay. Let's see. So this is for the during construction phase of the special conditions of the order of conditions. Condition 33, at least once during each week in which construction activity occurs on site and for as long thereafter as ground remains unstable, the permittee, their successors and/or assigns shall submit a report from a registered professional engineer, registered professional land surveyor, or qualified environmental specialist to the Conservation Commission certifying that, to the best of their knowledge and belief based on a careful site inspection, all work is being performed in compliance with the order of conditions. Upon request or inspection, the Commission shall determine when the ground is stabilized and when the reports may cease. In the event that there is a break in the construction schedule, the permittee may petition the Commission to cease submittal of reports until such time that construction activities resume.
So it seems like, based on your observations and the request we're receiving, that is the case at this time, that the site's stable, activities have ceased temporarily, and the reporting will continue when work resumes. Is that what we're looking at in a nutshell?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay, so would anyone care to, just to be thorough, make a motion to temporarily suspend condition, you said 33, special condition 33?
Yes.
Until such a time that activities resume, and further to require a minimum 48-hour notification prior to activities beginning again?
I'll make a motion to suspend reporting of condition 33 as discussed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Commissioner August?
Aye.
Commissioner Harwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Buttrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sahil, for joining us for that. Yeah, you should be all set. I'll send you a follow-up email. And then also, just regarding the request for amended order of conditions, I'll also be working on that. Hopefully should be able to get that, the order of conditions amended and sent out, hopefully by the end of this week or next. I'm going to work on it as quick as I can.
Thank you, Cassie, and the Conservation Commission.
Thank you. All right, we will resume agenda order. Cassie, you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Item 4, enforcement actions. CFN Properties LLC, complete automotive repair, 10 O'Neill Street, map 114, lot 31.
Yeah, so this one is, the question now is if we would like to formally issue an enforcement order. And the reasoning behind that is that I did receive a return receipt from my last letter in which I, said they needed to come talk to us that time. The dates specified on that letter have come and gone. And I know that they have received our last letter. So the question, I think, at the last meeting was, they do not appear to, based off of, commissioners' observations, they don't appear to be using the impacted area anymore, though it does appear they potentially could be still mowing that area. And no restoration has been completed there. I think Jay had said he was going to go take a look. I don't know if that had happened or not.
I went there before our last scheduled meeting that got canceled, but it had not been mowed in about 8 weeks at, like 2 Sundays ago. So there's no clearing occurring. There were no vehicles on it. The grass was about, 18 inches high, and there's no clearing in the woods or any changes. So they haven't touched the area.
So now it's a matter of, does the commission want restoration of that area to what was the woody vegetation line, as opposed to not?
Yeah, so the area, my understanding, wasn't supposed to be cleared. It was cleared. We've been trying to work with them to take care of it.
Mhm.
They haven't been responsive lately, so it seems like enforcement is the way to go to me.
Okay. So Cassie, can you pull that together?
You were saying we want to issue an enforcement order?
Is there any other input from members of the commission? Yeah,
Okay.
please pull it together.
Drafted. I just want to make sure, just in case if anybody had any comments about it before, here we go. Otherwise, I'll send that post haste. I'm just going to read you what the extent and type of activity was real quick. It says on 9/23/19, the Conservation Commission was informed that vegetation removal as well as vehicle storage had occurred within 100 feet of the wetland buffer zone. Work documented by the Conservation Commission on 9/23/2019 is consistent with the submitted plan approved via order of conditions at the March 10th, 08 Conservation Commission meeting. The property owner has conducted additional work beyond that which was described in the order of conditions, and the activity is in violation of the provisions of the certificate of compliance issued on 8/8/11/2011 at the Conservation Commission meeting, that date. What I didn't know is that if we wanted to order that the property owner and his agents and all others shall immediately cease and desist from any activity. That one, it seemed like we should check off. Resource area alterations resulting from said activity shall be corrected and the resource area returned to their original condition. And then the third option is to also require a restoration plan shall be filled with the issuing authority on or before a given date.
I think cease and desist and provide a restoration plan. What do others think?
Makes sense.
I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, and so basically just have all three items checked off. And there were no other notes about it. So I just didn't know if you want me to add anything. Otherwise, I'll be sending it off.
Okay, please do.
Great.
Thank you. Next item, Cernak, Westview Terrace, map 165, lot 47.
No updates.
Kaufman, 298 Ladville Road. We have an order of conditions now. St. Bridget's Cemetery, Our Lady of the Valley Parish, Everett Street, map 145, lot 37.
Yes.
Any updates there?
Yeah, conducted a site visit on July 27th, 2020. I took a number of images if you want me to show the photos. They created a berm protected temporary soil storage area as opposed to what had been occurring there before. So now there's a designated area for soil storage that is protected by a berm. They cleaned and then revegetated the swale area with a number of plantings, of native plantings. They also cleaned and revegetated the encroachment area located at another part in the property that had been occurring. There have been ongoing invasive treatments throughout, and there was pretty much no invasives when we conducted the site visit. And, there was like little sprigs, but they've been managed quite well. There's been a request to remove the existing straw wattles as the area is revegetated now. And they were curious what further steps are necessary in order to lift the enforcement order. I'm actually the images are really helpful. I'm gonna share those just while you guys see if there's any comments.
Cassie, what were the dates that the plantings were installed?
Hold on a second.
Thank you.
I'm not sure actually when that, we got a report. Hold on a second. They were likely installed, let's see. Okay, so restoration plants and erosion control mulch was installed throughout June and July 2020. So that just kind of gives me a general date, June and July of this year.
So considering we're in a drought, I think I personally, and I'm open to suggestions and counterpoints from the commission, obviously. I would like to see how vegetation survives the first, growing season that was installed several months into the growing season and happened to coincide with a drought, unfortunately. So I want to make sure that the plantings remain viable before we lift the enforcement order. So I think see where we are at the end of the growing season.
Agree.
I appreciate the efforts that have gone into complying with this.
Great. And the other question that they had was if these straw bottles seen here could be removed.
Do you think the site is stable enough to remove them?
I believe it is. I think these ones in particular are not in the area that was changed through their restoration work. These ones are kind of part of runoff prevention. So this area was quite vegetated, and that was where where the work had occurred. So.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm fine. If you determine that the site was stable in that location, then I have no objection to someone actually removing erosion controls and wattles.
Okay. All right, great.
Great, okay. Next item, Autumn Properties LLC, rear 161 to 165 Northampton Street.
No updates.
Bernard Gall, 37 South Street.
No updates.
Okay, are there any open space updates? Echodale West Orchard area improvements?
I don't have any updates yet for this. I'm still researching the bidding process, unfortunately, but hopefully for the next meeting.
All right. Lathrop Community of Easthampton, Florence Road Conservation Land discussion?
No updates.
Okay. Rather than, and if anyone objects, please let me know. Can we take a high-level overview of compliance updates and just let us know of these items if there are any updates to discuss other than status quo?
I have no updates to discuss. I've been receiving reports, so I have nothing else to add.
Okay, are there any items of particular interest to commission members? Okay, moving on to general business. Meeting minutes, July 13th, 2020.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Harwood.
Aye.
Motion carries. Cassie, are there any Mutters Field updates?
Yes, I contacted Marty Klein of Piscomic Land Trust and Conservation Trust, excuse me, and he had a response I can read to you guys. And just kind of to go a little quicker, he said that regarding the East Street parking area, initially in 2012/2016, they decided to only pave the handicap designated spaces there. As part of the original plan, we had a rain garden constructed to handle runoff from that parking area. It is located on the east side, adjacent to the trail at the bottom of the slope that is in the middle of the ramp at the entrance. We also constructed a crushed rock drain that goes from the parking area down to the rain garden on the east end of the lot. Plans were drawn/done by local landscape architect Bill Cannon, and work was done by Pioneer Landscape. In the intervening 4 years since the opening, we have had to deal with ongoing erosion and maintenance issues related to the unpaved area of the lot and a couple of small unpaved stretches of the ramp. Hence our decision this year to pave the remainder of those areas. Hope that helps. Please let me know if you need any more information. And I believe the last time we discussed this, I know it's been a minute, there's questions of if the existing stormwater provisions can accommodate that paving.
Right. So they had a permit, they had an order of conditions, their stormwater was adequate for what they were proposing at the time. And the question that needs to be answered now is, you know, they paved the parking lot. I don't have a site plan in front of me. Cassie, maybe you can figure out or take a look in the files and see how much of the parking lot is in buffer zone. I'm assuming.
I think it was none. Wait, hold on. I have it right here. Hold on.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, so actually a large portion of the parking lot was in the buffer zone, except in the least in the buffer zone was the previously proposed paved portion just for the handicap parking. Let's see. I have a better image.
That seems weird.
Here, I'm going to show. I'm sharing my screen now. So this isn't the as-built, but it matches pretty good to the as-built. This is the area that was paved, the paved areas. This is the buffer.
Can you zoom in more, please? I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time. Okay.
Okay.
So can you, okay, there's the 100-foot buffer zone line. Ugh. So technically paving that parking lot, converting impervious to pervious is subject to the Wetlands Protection Act. And should have undergone review before it was done. So I think we need to reach back out and explain that to Mr. Klein.
Okay, I can do that.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay.
And are we thinking that as a result, he might ask what next steps would be? Would it be after the fact permitting, or?
I would prefer that to an enforcement order.
And would it be an RDA or would it be an NOI?
I think I need to give that some more thought unless anyone else has. Do we have a number on the parking area in buffer zone in terms of square footage?
Mm-hmm. I don't at this time.
Okay. If we could, I'll try to figure that out. Follow up with you for the next meeting.
Okay, well, I'll reach out to them either way and say that after the fact permitting is an option.
Yep, unless anyone else objects. Okay, next item, 66 Cherry Street. Do you send a photo?
Yes, we do. So, stop sharing that. So this is there. I received a comment from a member of the public that they had believed that there had been some depositing of soil within the resource areas associated with the Brickyard Brook area. Upon visiting that area, it does appear that that's the case to me. And I'm going to share this image that I have. Oh, yeah. I'm going to share this image that I have now. Here we go. So down at the bottom of the photograph here, that's the Brickyard Brook. I'm standing on the public access trail that's associated with that area. And then this is pretty close.
Clearly a whole bunch of fill very close to the stream.
And I was there this morning. They're still actively working on it. It looks like there's also a layer of sawdust too. I don't know exactly what project they're doing. They were crushing gravel, it looked like, but.
Okay, so this is clear violation. Cassie, can you please issue a cease and desist?
Yeah, no problem.
Order with cease and desist.
Oh, yeah, that was my question, is if you wanted me to just go straight to enforcement order or just do the cease and desist first and request attendance?
Go do the cease and desist first, but yeah, that's unconsolidated, unstabilized slope immediately above a stream, potential wetland or wetland fill.
You sure we couldn't just do an enforcement order with the cease and desist and also say, like, take that stuff out of there ASAP and then submit a restoration plan or something like that? It just might be easier, take fewer steps.
Fewer steps?
Yeah.
Can you write that, Cassie?
Yeah, I can do that. I already have them both drafted and ready to go. So,
was there anything in the commission's files, past files? Because I certainly have no recollection of anything at that property during my time on the board.
Yeah, no, I didn't find anything associated with that.
Okay.
I don't remember anything there either.
No, the only things we've done have been on.
And I checked with the building department and the planning department. They don't have any work being permitted there either.
Okay. And did you verify through stream stats whether or not that was a perennial or intermittent stream at that point?
I think that, no, I haven't done that. Sorry.
Okay. Let's double check that too and make sure we don't have a riverfront area violation as well as buffer zone and potential. I have no idea if there's BVW there or not.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. 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 MAC membership renewal.
Just last meeting, you guys asked me to confirm with Jeff that we had funds for that. He confirms that we do. I just didn't know if we needed to make a vote on that to spend those funds on this or not.
We can. Does everyone want to renew our membership with the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions?
Yes.
You're making a motion?
We really need a motion.
I don't know.
Motion to renew our membership, spend money to do so.
Motion to spend money.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, roll call vote. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Harwood.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Do we have to get 3 quotes from the competing environmental organization?
Ignoring that comment. So next item, Cassie, I don't think there was any emergency declaration associated with Tropical Storm Isaias.
Oh yeah, no, that was all good. We don't need to, I have nothing to add to that.
Okay. So if there were any actions necessary to address storm damage, it would either have to come through as an emergency cert process or permitting if it's within jurisdiction. All right, bit of a marathon meeting. Motion to adjourn?
No.
Anything else, Kathy?
There's one more item. I'm so sorry. This is the last.
Not on the.
Sorry.
Calling it the Columbo.
This is for 100 Loudville Road, beaver management. The city DPW informing that they will be pursuing removal as soon as possible because the beavers have been rebuilding already. The health department requires approval from the commission in order to accept the DPW's application to commence trapping. I can screen share their application if you'd like, but I don't know. I think it's just like something that says you guys are okay with it.
And to be clear, this is a health department requirement, not a Wetlands Protection Act requirement.
That's correct. They've already, they went through us for an emergency certification to do the initial dam removal. And this has been something. Here's the permit.
I'm whistling, but I'm not on mute.
So where is it that it requires our input?
I got an email from the health department. It doesn't say anywhere. There's nowhere for us to input that, but you just emailed me saying that they needed it.
It's that beaver activity.
That's right.
I mean, we approved the removal of the dam. I'm not sure what other authority other than they need to know that we approved the removal of the dam, and anything beyond that is beyond our purview. So I'm not quite sure what to give them.
Yeah, I think, I know it's kind of funny. I guess I can just reiterate to her that we approved the removal of the dam. And I'll tell her this isn't in our purview, because I don't know if we can say we approve of something if we don't have the authority to do that.
Right. I would do that. I would reiterate the emergency cert that we granted, and go from there.
Okay. All right. That was the last one.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Happy birthday, Cassie.
Happy birthday, Cassie.
Thank you. Thank you, Cassie. Roll call vote. Patrick.
What are we voting for? Happy birthday, Cassie? Or adjourning?
Adjourning.
Adjourning.
Yeah, I'll second either one of these. Or no,
August.
Aye.
Whittemore.
Second, third,
Ryan.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Cassie.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.